Hello everyone and welcome to the program Business Point on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi. Many thanks for joining on today's edition of the program as we tend to look at the impact of oil price in Africa. A couple of days ago rather, we witnessed Donald Trump making mention of we will drill, baby drill, and also before all of this statement was made by him, we saw that the oil price was over $85 dollar to a barrel. But when that speech was made, we witnessed a significant dip in the crude oil price to $77 per barrel. So looking at those now, automatically that effect on all of those statements he made cushioned down on the global oil price, the crude oil price. And then before then we saw a hike in the oil price here in Nigeria and also some parts of Africa. But when those statements were made, automatically in the international market we witnessed a dip in the price, which is something that whole Nigerians have been clamoring for. Back home here in Nigeria, we've witnessed that Dangote refinery and its prices has also dipped down and then declined. Now Dangote's landing cost is at 890 naira. That's what he charges currently for his landing cost of crude and PMS rather. So looking at all of this now, it has a different effects on the price in fuel. Now filling stations, depending on where you're buying around within 945 naira to 990 naira. So it's now below the 1,000 naira mark. So now we've seen a whole lot of declaration and we've heard that the reason why the price in the international market, crude price now in the international market tends to go up is because of some insurgencies happening within the Middle East and also the war going on within Russia and Ukraine. Some persons have argued differently that Russia, on the other hand, uses the revenue generated from this high cost of crude in the international markets. They use it to fund their war against Ukraine, and also it's helping the economy stabilize. But on the other hand, people have reacted that Donald Trump's most publicity and also comment is actually to OPEC is for them to cut down the price so as Russia wouldn't have the enabling power to be able to fund its economy and also fund the war in Ukraine. But now people are asking questions, is President Donald Trump and his policies now, is it being political or he has the entire universe in mind? But the one thing we always know is that Donald Trump has been very, very vocal when it comes to America and then buy America and putting America first. So now we would agree that yes, he's putting his country first as the president, so as the country would be able to enjoy the dividends of having him as a president. Also, the Saudi Arabian guys are planning to make a $600 billion investment in the U.S. in the crude oil, in the oil sector, but Donald Trump is looking to push it to $1 trillion. So we'll be having a conversation around that. We'll be having a conversation on how the international community, that's the international market, oil market now is affecting Africa, and how Africa can be able to navigate this current situation and also not be so much dependent on crude oil. We're also going to be looking at how we can, diversify and have all of this conversation on today's edition. So we also know, looking at what Donald Trump made mention of, we will be drilling baby drill. As he says, we have the largest amount of oil and gas in the world, and we will use it all. All of the statements caught my attention when he actually made those bold statements. And being one of the most powerful presidents in the universe, most of the times when his speeches does come out, it affects the markets drastically. So on this note, we'll be having conversation on how the president is affecting Africa and what Africa can be able to do to navigate the current economic situation, hampering this part of the world, looking at inflation and also looking at how we can diversify into technological and digital innovations to help navigate the current economic situation being faced by this part of the country and by this part of the world. Joining me to have this conversation is an energy economist in the person of Sani Musa. Good morning, Sani. Thank you. Sani Musa is joining us from Dundee, United Kingdom. Good morning, Sani. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Business Point.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Samuel. I'm excited to be here once again.
Yes, I know you've been following the trend so far on the current trend going on within the international markets currently. So let's look at it from this angle. What do you think of Donald Trump's current request for OPEC to reduce the prices of crude oil in the international market, and how do you think this is going to, impact the African community?
All right, so Samuel, you see, before I tell you what the OPEC think or what the OPEC is trying to do about Donald Trump's announcement earlier, I think it is important for people to understand the point or the context, although you have made some explanation to that. During the inauguration, the president signed an executive order which gives America the chance to ramp up its production. And in his own statement, I quote, "We will drill, baby, drill." This is a very popular quote now in the oil and gas industry.
Yes.
And simply even added that America has the largest reserve of oil, which is very true. It has been proven by a lot of energy agencies, research institutions. And he bragged that they are going to use it all. So when a powerful president like Donald Trump speaks about this, it normally goes beyond the talk. It means that America is willing to ramp up its production to increase it despite being the largest producer presently in the world. They are targeting to even go higher. And again, it means that Donald Trump is willing to oppose all the policies, the energy policies during the Biden's administration, which include the banning of export or the banning of exploration in some fields. For instance, I was just watching, and the newly appointed Interior Secretary of the United States just on Monday recently announced that they have revoked the documents, or they have revoked the actions of the Biden's administration that banned oil drilling in over 600 million acres of the federal waters, over 20 million acres of the wildlife reserve in Alaska, and of course they are resuming drilling in the over 19 million acres of the American National Petroleum Reserve. So this said, you see, Donald Trump has taken a complete U-turn against what Joe Biden did in terms of promoting green energy. And that is why he said we are going to do the baby drilling. And of course, he said they are going to produce more and more. So people would like to know, okay, why? You mentioned that, is it political? Or I think it is more of political, because there is not an emergency in the energy market in America. They are the largest producers already. They do not have problems of import. They do not have problems of export. But it can have some economical advantage that it brings to America by increasing the production, which we are going to explore along the conversation. But it is largely political, I believe, which is not bad. It is very good, because he's trying to portray America as a very giant country that it is. So it is actually like that. So, and you asked what it means for the OPEC. OPEC have heard about this announcement, and at first OPEC didn't say anything, but after analyzing, OPEC has came to agree that they are not increasing their production now. Donald Trump is urging OPEC to increase their production because his own motive is for American energy to be cheap. And for American energy to be cheap, there has to be a lot of supply. Just like basic economics taught us, when there is high supply, then demand will be less. And when demand is less, of course, prices go well for the consumers. So, but presently, the OPEC has already mentioned that they are not willing to reduce their own production as of now. But they will keep observing the dynamics and may issue other different announcements along the line when we proceed with how, or when we see how things unfold under Trump's administration.
Yeah, so looking at those angles now, OPEC, because I was actually going to get to that, OPEC has reacted and then they have made mention of not wanting to increase their production, which boils down to the current situation we are facing. Though the latest statement that was made by Donald Trump, we saw that the prices in the international market dropped down, and then it affected the Nigerian market, and then we've seen how the prices went down from 1,150 naira, depending on where individuals are getting their petrol now, to about 900. So these effects now cushion the price of PMS in Nigeria. Though we're still going to look at the bigger picture now. Why do you think that the OPEC is now ready to increase its production?
Okay. So you see, the OPEC as an organization has been in existence since the 90s. And what OPEC does is that it stands to protect the interests of its members by ensuring that prices of fuel are controlled so that they maximize their own profit. So now if you ask me why they don't want to increase production, it is simply because they would want to still maintain a consistent amount of profit to their pocket, which is the ultimate goal for any investor. So the OPEC has been surviving competitions for a long while since its establishment from rivals like the United States. For instance, if we can remember during the some price wars that happened when there was a lot of production from the United States, we saw
I think that was
prices
2006.
Yeah, exactly. We saw 2006. We saw prices go down to a whopping $20. You see, from a very steady amount or a large price to now a very small price of $20, and that was simply because of the rivalry that existed between OPEC and its non-members. So, but the beautiful thing with OPEC is that OPEC has a very good advantage that it produces energy at a cheaper price than its rivals in the United States, because OPEC is looking at a production cost of around $10 to $15 or $20 maximum, while countries like the United States are producing at a higher rate. So no matter the price crash, America will feel the impact deeply than the OPEC. So this time around, OPEC is not willing to do that production cut because they would want to maintain that level of profit they are making. So, and as an organization that is protecting the interests of its members, I don't think it's a problem for now. So now we have to wait and see whether Donald Trump will push diplomatically to influence OPEC to lower, which I don't see it coming anytime soon, because all the operations that Trump wants to do might go against the economic interest of the OPEC. So now there will be conflict of interest. For now, I don't see a reason why OPEC will submit to Donald Trump's demand of ramping up their own production. But they will have to observe the market and, of course, look at the dynamics that will favor their members more effectively. Then they will decide on whether to go up or down. But for now, they have made it clear that they are maintaining that steady flow of their production and nothing more for now.
Yeah, well, yes, we've seen that too. But now let's talk about, Nigeria and Africa. Nigeria now, they are major oil producers, and also exports of this oil now is what helps Nigeria, that generate more revenue into Nigeria. And then we've seen Angola and Libya, which are also countries that export and then produce large quantities of oil. So looking at OPEC now and looking at Donald Trump's policies now, how do you think is going to impact this African communities that I just aforementioned, and what do you think Nigeria, Angola, Libya should be able to do to navigate this current shift that is about to happen in the oil industry?
All right. So Samuel, this brings it to a more interesting part, because Africa, our beloved continent, is a house of untapped potentials when it comes to oil and gas resources. For instance, Nigeria, Mozambique, Angola, Senegal, a lot of these countries, they have this massive oil reserves in their lands. So what the Trump's administration, what the Trump's declaration means to Africa, it means two things. And these two things depends on whether Donald Trump pushes on an aggressive drilling or he ends up not pushing as his aspirations. So let's take the first scenario. If Donald Trump pushes for aggressive drilling on the American soil, it means that there will be a lot of supply of crude in the world. And this might bring the prices of oil down because, as I mentioned to you, basic economics, higher production or higher supply is equal to higher supply will always result into lower demand, and that will crash the prices. So if that crashes the prices, then Africa will cry. Why? Because Africa makes profit when the market is booming. Africa only realizes its profit when the market is given very good prices, simply because the production cost is a bit higher in Africa, particularly in Nigeria. So that means for Nigeria to enjoy the oil market, then it has to come with some very lucrative amount or a very high prices of the crude. So in terms where, or in cases where we have prices lower than 50, then Africa will struggle to break even and even make profit. But if there is higher price, then Africa will stand to benefit more. So if Trump pushes for an aggressive drilling, then this might be a problem for African continent, because we really need that good price in the market for us to break even and make profit. So for countries like Nigeria, for instance, Nigeria relies on petroleum export or crude export for over 80% of its revenue. So when they tell you that Naira or the crude is not having any significant price in the global market, then that directly affects the 80% revenue generation to the country. And I don't need to tell you what that can do to the economy. So a lot of weaknesses on that. And this applies to a lot of other countries like the Angola, Mozambique and others. So Africa will not benefit from an aggressive drilling project by the Trump. Otherwise, there is another option. I told you two scenarios. If Africa, or if Donald Trump motivates or takes the interest to motivate his own American entrepreneurs to come to Africa and invest, then Africa stands to benefit a lot, because Africa will never be out of the game. These untapped reserves, American companies like Chevron and others might come and invest in the drilling projects, and this means that Africa will earn a lot. Africa will get massively from the American investment, because what Donald Trump is doing is that he is making the policies very friendly for the investors, and he is trying to convince a lot of investors to come and drill. And this drilling could be in Africa, it could be anywhere. It's just American companies incentivized to produce more and more, because his own motive is to make energy cheaper. Wherever it comes, he wants to make it cheaper for his citizens. So that said, these two options, depending on how the president decides to play the game, it can stand as a benefiting factor or otherwise to the African continent. But I am an optimistic person. I just believe that whatever the case, if Africa, I repeat, if Africa maintains, or if Africa decides to be strategically positioned, what I mean is that if it decides to make its policies very friendly for investors, then there is nothing that will stop the American investors to come in and drill project, because Africa is blessed with crude that is very compatible with some of the refineries in the United States. So it makes more economical and logistic sense for America to come here, drill, and export to the country in order to refine and do other things. So this said, Africa stands to benefit, especially if Africa positions itself strategically, stabilize policies, and do other things.
Investments and also being strategic. Nigeria has actually waived up the taxes for deep sea oil drilling, so I know that's one of an avenues to be able to open up for investors. And also Donald Trump is also pushing to get a $600 the Saudi Arabians have actually proposed a $600 billion investment in oil, but Donald Trump is pushing for $1 trillion. So we know in the long run, Africa and Nigeria might be able to benefit from all of these investments. But looking at it now from the very long run, for the common man in the streets and then that's always keen to taking transportation for work and all, how can Nigeria and Africa tend to navigate this current situation? Just in case there's a worst case scenario, how can Africa be able to be more innovative with its planning to be able to navigate the current maybe any recurrent issues that would warrant Africa not generating or making so much profit if Donald Trump and his policies and the United States goes for a drastic drilling process?
Okay, as I told you earlier, Africa remains in the game, but what makes Africa very credible and relevant is when Africa decides to be very pragmatic and also very strategic with its policies, because it's a game of investment, and this investment can come only if investors are very certain about policies. So if Africa, for instance, let me give you a simple example. We have seen a lot of American companies, or let me say oil giants, divesting their investment or divesting to other places and leaving Nigeria, for instance. Why? They have reasons, and these reasons are mostly influenced by economical factors or disadvantages. So if Africa can position itself, solve these issues or these factors that are influencing this divestment, then I am so confident that the American investment will come to the continent. So it is very simple. African oil is a very good oil, and it is needed. It makes economical sense because here you have the light oil, you have the sweet one, you have the heavy one, you have all kind of oil that are very compatible to global refineries. So the only major factor that investors want to be sure of is that stability. And once we have that stability, government prioritize on attracting this investment, then a lot of investment will come and Africa will stand to benefit. Because higher production means higher revenue. Because as countries are producing more, that means they are getting more into their pocket. Again, Donald Trump's pragmatic approach may also influence their investors to come to Africa. Because, for instance, if you check, we have oil. Sometimes the African fossil fuel is not very attractive to the global market. Most especially what we have seen during the last years of the Biden administration. A lot of African crude was not very attractive because there was a push for green energy. So now that we have someone that is friendly and is saying no to the green energy, then this potential that Africa has shall be marketed. But as I told you, Mr. Samuel, Africa has to be very serious. Africa has to strategize, and Africa has to position itself in a way that these investors will feel safe to bring their money to the continent. So Africa will definitely benefit when we do this.
Sani Musa for joining us on today's edition of Business Point, and thank you for your in-depth analysis on the subject matter.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel.
Yes, and that's how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Business Point Africa. The bottom line of the entire conversation is for Africa to wake up, implement the strategies and also the initiatives that we have on paper, and make our environment very conducive for foreign investors to come in, not just Africa alone, Nigeria and every other African country. So we're hoping to see all of these policies being in place, and so as Nigeria and Africa at large will be able to benefit from the current policies of President Donald Trump and the international markets. That's how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Business Points. My name is Samuel Odi. I'll see you again as we talk more business. Bye for now.